Susan pulled into the familiar driveway of her father's house a little after 10 in the morning. The drive from Perth had gone as usual, accompanied by a podcast on ancient volcanic shields and her internal debate over whether she should have brought that second thermos of tea. She turned off the ignition, stretched her stiff shoulders, and slung her backpack over one shoulder, the same one patched with polished stones, teabag tags, and the frayed Curtin University emblem. She pushed open the gate. Coming at her full speed was Alpha the shepherd, with an expression that screamed, "Where have you been all my life?" She whined joyfully, wagging her tail hard enough to shake the bushes, and immediately leaned into Susan's side.
"Hey there, old girl,"
Susan said, crouching to press her cheek to Alpha's warm fur.
"Missed me, huh?" "Yeah, I missed you too."
Alpha snorted, nudged her with her nose, and proceeded to lick Susan from chin to brow with complete disregard for manners. Susan chuckled, wrapped her arms around the dog's neck, and kissed her back, wherever she could reach, nose, ear, crown. Together, they headed into the house. Her father, as always, was already gone. His early runs usually started at sunrise, especially when there was installation work near the canal. The house was quiet and cool, filled with the scent of wood and the sealed jar of coffee beans. First thing, Susan put the kettle on, scooped grounds into the French press, and took the first few sips by the window, her little ritual. Then came a shower, and afterwards she changed into her favorite faded blue curtain t-shirt and jeans, hair up in a ponytail, business as usual. She settled on the veranda with a mug of coffee and her laptop, ready to wait for the latest issue of the Mandurah Times to arrive. Alpha curled up at her feet, snoring softly, twitching her ears at every sound from the street. A little before 11, there was a faint thump. The mailbox rattled and then fell silent again. Susan stood, walked to the gate, and pulled out the rolled-up newspaper sealed in clear plastic. Back in the kitchen, she spread it out on the table and pushed her laptop aside. She remembered what Sam had told her. Don't read, check. Every image, every ad block, with fingers, one by one, slowly. She didn't rush. The paper looked like it always did. Steak discounts, 2-for-1 deals, accounting courses, shampoo, dog grooming salons. On page 14, something shifted under her fingers. An ad for a toothbrush, Refresh, a new generation of clean, wavered like ripples in water. The image dissolved and another layer appeared. Dear residents of Mandurah, we're thrilled to announce the grand opening of a brand new family activity center, the Altar Loop, a space for movement, joy, and the future. Formerly Inflatable World, now reimagined as part of the growing altar culture. Today only, grand opening, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Gifts for the first 50 visitors, free lemonade and fruit for the whole family, aerial shows, bouncy battles, robo-clowns, and much more. Join us for the celebration and unlock exclusive altar bonuses. Susan gave a quiet snort. She checked the address at the bottom, everything matched. She glanced at the clock, 11:07.
"Well then, Altar Loop.
She said aloud, brushing hair behind her ear.
Let's see what you got."
15 minutes later, Susan parked by the building at the corner of Mandurah Terrace. Music was booming down the street. Light electronic beats, kids laughing, balloons popping, and voices shouting through megaphones. In front of her stood a huge windowless building, narrow and white, 5 stories tall, with a glowing iridescent sign above the entrance. The Altar Loop. The area in front was buzzing with activity. White rabbits were hosting contests, handing out fruit and balloons, yelling into microphones. 5th jump, for the brave only. Who'll beat the bunny in the bounce battle? Red rabbits danced in formation, passing out cups of lemonade and snacks. Susan made her way through the stream of kids and parents toward the ticket booth. A girl in a branded Altar Loop t-shirt greeted her with a smile. "Welcome, today only, tickets just 10. Susan paid, received a wristband and headed for the entrance, when a red rabbit suddenly appeared beside her. "Welcome to the Altar Loop," he chirped, waving wildly. "You're gonna love it here. Want a bonus card? You've got no idea what it can unlock." Susan was ready. Sam had warned her. She smiled sweetly and nodded. The bunny immediately handed her a tablet, seemingly pulled from thin air. On the white screen pulsed 6 red rectangles. "One try, pick anyone, and you won't regret it," the rabbit chattered. Susan tapped the bottom right rectangle at random. The screen blinked. A message appeared. Alter 5. "Ooh, level 5, whistled the rabbit. "Welcome to the movement. New horizons, new possibilities." He handed Susan a glossy red card labeled Alter 5 and presented it to her like a medal. She had barely taken the card when a whisper echoed behind her, many voices at once, as if coming from the air itself.
Level 5, level 5, level 5.
She turned around. No one was there. Just a couple of white rabbits arguing by the bounce arch, and 3 girls in inflatable crowns riding a giant donut. Susan flipped the card. On the back, engraved in crisp lettering, it read, "Susan Margaret White." She slipped the card into her pocket, took a deep breath and stepped inside. What she saw had nothing to do with the trampoline center it used to be. The ceiling vanished into a misty haze, platforms floated in midair, walls and arches shimmered at the edge of visibility. The air was damp and carried a faint scent of ozone. Every step triggered faint glimmers in the floor. She stepped onto one of the platforms. Beneath her foot, a glowing caption flickered, Z plus 1.02. Displacement tolerated. Platform stabilized. A tall woman passed by, her eyes set too close together, one arm unnaturally long. She was recording something into a wrist-mounted device and mumbled, "Loop integrity, human variable, acceptable." Across the space, on a far platform, stood a man in a faded red suit. A glowing panel hovered beside him, mass unstable. Recalculating coordinate mesh, Susan moved forward, trailing her hand along an arch. In response, a fracture map ignited, shifting vectors, seismic lines. Fracture line, unstable, control vector not registered. A voice came from above. Loop, coefficient stable, human factor, neutral. Susan paused by a spherical map. Continents, blurred like watercolor stains, drifted slowly in the void. One of them, at a certain angle, vaguely resembled the western coast of Australia, but when she blinked, the shape melted away, as if someone was editing her perception in real time. She pulled out her Alter 5 card and raised it slowly toward the dome. The card glowed briefly with a red shimmer, and next to the sphere, new text emerged. Active bearer recognized, scanning level 5. A new platform opened in front of her, not floating but embedded in the floor. She stepped onto it. The surface lit up. Geological analysis active. Projection interworld strata structure. Beneath her feet, layers began to appear, like a digital cross-section of the Earth. Inside, fault zones, magma flows, areas of tectonic stress. But something was off. One of the cross-sections spiraled, and its labels were written in an unfamiliar language, letters like mirrored fragments of English.
This is subsidence.
Susan muttered.
Like in a stress zone, but not here. Not on this Earth.
She touched one of the segments. A faint click echoed as if something deep below had responded. The card in her hand grew warm, just for a second, as if confirming the contact. Loop synchronized. Level 5 active. Shift point registered. Susan stepped back, eyes fixed on the layered scan. One of the sections glowed red, the same shade as the mineral veins she'd found in rocks at the edge of Mandurah. She instantly recalled the lab photo. They had been part of the loop all along. She stepped off the platform, still feeling the strange inertia lingering in her body. The space around her vibrated faintly, not through the air, but through the fabric of reality itself. She was already turning toward the exit when the sole of her shoe briefly stuck to the floor, as if she'd stepped into a thin film of glue. She yanked her foot instinctively. There was a soft snap as it came free. Something small sparkled on the platform. Susan leaned down. A tiny crystal lay there, irregular in shape, a deep burgundy color. It pulsed with soft inner light as if breathing. On its surface, microscopic patterns, not engraving but natural inclusions, like the branching fibers in a meteorite. The crystal was warm, like a sun-baked stone. No known mineral behaved this way. Not garnet, not quartz, not volcanic glass, something else entirely. She turned it over in her fingers, squinting. The crystal seemed to respond to her touch, not aggressively, but with quiet intent, as if it were waiting. She slipped it into the front pocket of her jeans, and a moment later, tucked the card in beside it. Now she had two pieces of proof, one physical, one encrypted, both from a world that shouldn't exist. Susan lingered for a heartbeat longer, then turned and stepped back through the light threshold. Outside, the same altar loop facade shimmered in the sunlight. The rabbits were still entertaining the children. For ordinary people, nothing had changed. Susan walked to her car, got in and drove off, without turning on the radio. Back home after visiting the altar loop, Susan sat once again at the kitchen table. Her coffee had gone cold, but she took a sip without noticing the taste. On the table lay her Altar 5 card and the burgundy crystal, strange, pulsing, almost alive. She didn't touch it, just stared.
What are you?
Susan opened her laptop. On the screen was a topographic map of Mandurah, overlaid with a digital terrain model and a layer of geological anomalies. One by one, she added new information. 1. Mandurah Forum, Supermarket Coles and Revo Fitness, Altar Plus, Altar Bio Enhancement Center, first point. 2. Reading Cinemas, Altar Vox, second. 3. Abandoned warehouse by the old salt flats, Altar Terracore, third. 4. Inflatable World, Trampoline Center, the Altar Loop, fourth. She adjusted the map. The algorithm tried to create a symmetrical structure, but the angles wouldn't line up. Something was off.
The line doesn't close.
She muttered and tapped the screen. The program suggested a possible continuation of the vector. The new point appeared on the southwestern edge of town in the old industrial zone. The label read, Mandurah Storage and Logistics.
There you are,
she said.
5th point. Maybe that's where someone will get Altar 4.
She printed the map, circled the spot in marker and wrote next to it, Observe next Wednesday. Susan returned to her observation chart. Of the 6 card levels, only 4 had been identified so far. Dan, Sam, Michael, and now herself. Altar 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Only 4 and 6 left,
she said aloud. She paused. According to Sam, cards only appeared on Wednesdays, and only to those who found the hidden announcements. But if Michael got his card in a movie theater and not at the warehouse, and both Sam and Dan got theirs at Mandurah Forum, then not every altar location is a distribution point, but each one is part of the structure. Maybe you can still enter them on a Wednesday, even if you don't get a card. That needs testing. She circled the warehouse and fitness center, scribbled, Observe on Wednesday, chance to spot new bearers. Her mind jumped to something else. The red boxes and yellow question marks shown by Michael's device. Susan knew from Sam that there had once been a yellow question mark over her head. Now she had a card. If Sam's right, she hesitated, then there must be dozens, maybe hundreds of people like me in town. Yellow tags. Potential. But why? Why so many? And for the first time all day, a chill crept into her thoughts. Someone was rushing, or recruiting, or preparing. Whatever was happening in Mandurah, it wasn't random, and it didn't start long ago. She opened another tab, Geophysical Data. There hadn't been any notable anomalies beneath Mandurah until recently, but in the last few years, especially since 2020, subtle shifts, tremors, a recurring seismic ripple had started to appear, small but steady, as if someone was tampering with the structure of the Earth itself.
This isn't just coincidence,
Susan said quietly.
Someone's doing this.
She looked at the card, then at the crystal. She wrote in her notebook, Something new is happening beneath Mandurah, but the beginning is closer, not in the ground, in the structure of reality. Susan sat on the veranda, legs up on a chair, absent-mindedly spinning the Altar 5 card between her fingers. Her coffee had long gone cold, but she still held the mug in her lap. Alpha dozed beside her, head resting on Susan's bare foot. The sun was already high, but the warmth was gentle. Mandurah in April. The breeze from the canal rustled the mangrove leaves beyond the fence. It seemed like the perfect day to do nothing. But Susan had neither the mood nor the luxury.
Sitting around isn't an option,
She said softly.
Time's running out.
She had come here for just a couple of days to figure out what was going on. But it all went deeper and weirder than she'd imagined. She suddenly remembered the city library, not for the books, but for Richard Moore, a retired geologist and longtime friend of her father's. He'd been out of the field for years, but still worked in the archives at the Mandurah Library. Sam once mentioned that Moore loved to tell stories about lost maps and vanished expeditions. Susan stood up abruptly, set her mug on the railing, and gently nudged Alpha off her foot. The dog grunted but didn't mind, just stretched and rolled onto her side.
Sorry to betray you, old girl.
Susan smiled.
Just for an hour.
She tossed the card, laptop and notebook into her backpack and slipped out the side gate, leaving Alpha to guard the house. Then headed for her car. The Mandurah Library hid behind thick eucalyptus trees, as if it didn't really want to be found. A 1960s building, concrete, glass and the shade of old trees. Susan parked, let the heat slide off her shoulders, slung the backpack over one arm, and walked to the entrance. By the front desk sat Richard Moore, a lean man in a light shirt with rolled-up sleeves. Glasses on a cord, old-school jeans, and that slight librarian hunch that came from decades of living in paper. He raised his eyebrows when he saw her, squinted, and broke into a grin. Well, well, strike Sue herself. Where's your hammer?
Good afternoon, Mr. Moore. No hammer today, just curiosity.
Stronger than any tool. Come in. What are we looking for?
Legends, oddities, and geology that shouldn't exist.
She said mysteriously.
I might be digging where there are no faults.
Moore chuckled. Local girl finally buys into the old myths? Or is it that shiny degree of yours?
Both. But seriously, I'm researching local geo-anomalies. Mandurah region, especially the last 5 years. There's background seismic ripple, shifting water patterns, repeated GPS drift on the same patch of land.
Huh, I've heard about that. One of our older surveys had a spike in complaints from fishermen, said the seabed felt like it was breathing. Susan leaned forward, intrigued.
Did you keep that survey?
Maybe. But let's start with the classics. We've got old maps, tech notes, scraps from development zones, even some geo-exploration files from the 70s and 80s. He stood up, adjusted his glasses, and waved her over. Come on, let me show you our little treasure cave. You didn't expect this from a provincial library, did you?
I was kind of counting on it.
Susan grinned. They walked past rows of shelves, old newspapers and bound reports. In the corner, wooden card drawers, dusty with brass handles. Moore stopped, nodded at a side shelf. This section here, boring label, local research. But it's gold. I'd poke through it myself, but my eyes are tired. You've got fresh instinct.
Much appreciated, sir.
Call me if you find anything, he said, heading off. I'm off to make something this library dares to call coffee. He left her alone with the rustle of old paper and the low hum of the air conditioning. Susan ran her fingers along the spines of the books. Some had no titles. Some were bound in cracked, faded leather. One in particular caught her attention, a strange black book without any markings. The cover felt dense, slightly rough and wrong, as if it didn't belong on this shelf, or in this library at all. Susan sat at the nearest table and opened it. The pages were blank, absolutely blank, not a single word.
What the?
She muttered. She pulled out her Alta 5 card, glanced at it and on impulse laid it flat on the open spread. Instantly, pale lines began to emerge, faint, as if drawn in smoke. A heading, an introduction, diagrams. On the first page it said, "The history of Mandurah that never was, unverified reports and oral accounts." What followed read like fragments from personal journals. West of Clifton, the ground was beating like a pulse, like an old breathing volcano but with a light signature. While drilling well number 3, the equipment veered off, like it hit resistance, not rock, but space itself. Stromatolites near the lake began glowing under UV light. No prior luminescence was ever recorded. Susan froze, a faint smile playing on her lips.
Well, Alter 5, let's see what else you can do.
She turned another page, blank, then another, still blank. but the fourth page. Thin lines flickered to life like developing film. The letters shimmered, blinking in and out, giving off a strange warmth. In 1987, a drilling attempt was made under Lake Clifton. At 170 meters, the drill suddenly dropped. Equipment failed. Attempts to extract samples were unsuccessful, as if the Earth wasn't solid, but something pulsing and alive. Data lost. Susan held her breath. Lake Clifton again. She'd seen scattered references, but nothing consistent until now. It was all linking up. In the same coordinates, a month later, a sudden temperature spike was recorded. Locals reported the ground breathing. Farmers noted strange animal behavior, horses and dogs avoiding the southern slope. The western edge of Clifton was marked unstable, yet no mobile layers were detected. Experts wrote, "Disturbance does not originate from beneath the soil but appears to pass through it." She leaned in. The next page revealed a hand-drawn diagram, coastal lines and a long hexagon penciled over them. The nodes were marked: Node 1, Depot 7, Cinema Struct, Zone C, Node 5, and the last one, smudged beyond recognition. Susan closed her eyes for a moment, matching landmarks. Depot 7, the abandoned salt warehouse. Cinema Struct, the current movie theater site. Zone C, where the Alter Group warehouse once stood. Now Mandurah Forum. It all lined up.
A hexagon,
She whispered.
they built this with intent, patterned.
She took a photo of the page, then another and another. The following leaf read, "The rift beneath Mandurah is not tectonic. It is not tied to plate movement. Rather, it is a stabilized loop, an inversion structure, likely the result of spatial interference or layer overlap." Susan stopped. Her fingers went to the crystal in her pocket, still warm. Was it reacting, or just heated from her body? She pressed it to the edge of the page. The words glowed, sharper now. Final line: "The garden is a neutral zone. Its center is immobile. It remains unaffected by loop shift." Susan shot upright.
The garden, it's the central node?
She tore a page from her notebook and scribbled, "Hexagon, pre-designed, Alter Group, 1980s activity, Clifton, pulse origin, loop center, fixed, garden, neutral zone." She snapped the black book shut. Instantly, the pages went blank again, as if nothing had ever been written. Behind her, she heard footsteps, more returning. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, setting down a steaming cup of whatever the library called coffee. Susan smiled.
Let's just say I found more than I expected.
"Hopefully not the library ghost," he grinned.
Not yet. Just the ghost of truth. Thank you, Mr. Moore. You have no idea how important this is.
"Well, bless dusty archives," he said with a chuckle. "Come back any time. Sometimes we don't know what we've got until someone asks." Susan slung her backpack over one shoulder, nodded, and stepped back into daylight. Her phone screen blinked. 4:30 p.m. Still time before dinner. By 5:30, the house stirred with footsteps and voices. Her father and Sam returned from work, tired but in good spirits. They smelled of sun, sweat, and sawdust. After a few jokes and a quick clean-up, the three of them sat down to dinner. Grilled lamb, roasted veggies, a bowl of garlic flatbread. The talk was mostly between Sam and their dad, about a new job, a loose bracket, a client who thought install the AC meant fix half the house. Susan listened and smiled, but said little. She was waiting. After dinner, their father wandered out to the garden, as always. "Better water the roses while I can still see the roses." Susan dropped the altar card on the table with a slap.
Well, congratulations to me.
She said.
I'm now officially 3 levels cooler than you. Level 5, baby.
Sam raised his eyebrows. "Altar 5, seriously?"
Yep.
She smirked.
Hand-delivered by a rabbit in a wrinkled costume. Smelled like cheap popcorn and despair. Location: the Altar Loop. You know, the trampoline place on Randall Street.
Sam nodded. "Inflatable world?" Susan nodded back. Then she pulled the crystal from her pocket and set it next to the card. Sam tapped the rock with the tip of a pencil. "And this glammed-up pebble is for what, exactly?"
Well, for starters, it's warm like a kitten. Second, it glued itself to my shoe. kind of like Alpha when there's food around. And third,
From the backyard came their dad's voice. Alpha, that's not dinner. Drop it.
third,
Susan continued, pulling out her worn notebook.
I went to the library, found 2 things. 1, this card reveals hidden text in weird blank books. 2,
She tapped the crystal on the table.
this pebble draws geometry. It showed a hexagon when I placed it on the book's location map. It's not just a shape, it's a network. Each point isn't just a site, it's a crossing. I need to test more, but it fits. Also, one detail I didn't mention yet. The book literally said, crystals are anchors that stabilize the gateways. I think our garden might be the central anchor.
The garden?
Where your dad is right now?
She said, and walked him through the book's notes about loops and neutral zones. Silence. Wait, if this rock is the anchor and the garden is the center... Sam trailed off, eyes locked on the crystal. Did you try?
Putting the pieces together?
Susan pulled out a crumpled map.
Obviously, look here.
She laid it flat. The outline of a lopsided hexagon traced across Mandurah.
Forum, cinema, warehouse, loop, every point. And in the center?
Our house, Sam finished. His gaze shifted to the window where their dad's silhouette moved among the roses. So what are you saying? Dad is, what, some kind of multi-dimensional landscaper?
Either that,
Susan grinned.
or an unconscious conduit of the space-time continuum. Or maybe we still don't know everything about what that green exclamation mark over his head means.
So you think the altar centers were built because our garden is...
The belly button of the universe? Yeah, pretty much. All the points orbit us. Dad even plants his roses in perfect geometric patterns. I checked.
Maybe he's just a symmetry freak.
Sure, and totally by accident, his roses bloom all 365 days a year, even when no one waters them, while the neighbors' roses are dead by spring.
From outside came Alpha's triumphant bark. Apparently a frog had lost its battle. All right, Einstein in a ponytail, Sam said, standing up. So you're saying this is, what, an invasion?
Maybe. I think it's more like synchronization. They're not breaking in. They're folding into our world.
Susan said, her voice suddenly serious. I've got to head off. Jess is waiting, said Sam. How long are you in town?
2 days. I'm due back at the university the day after tomorrow.
Okay, I'll call later. We'll need to go over this with Michael and Dan. At exactly 10 p.m., Susan's phone buzzed. Sam's name flashed on the screen.
Hey.
She answered, putting her notebook aside. Hey, came Sam's tired voice. Just spoke to Michael. He's keen to meet you tomorrow morning. He'll be at your place around 9. He's bringing all the footage from the fitness center and the warehouse. You'll be able to see everything we captured. Susan nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Dan and I are tied up until evening, Sam continued, so you two decide how to proceed. We'll meet later to go over everything. Cool?
Got it.
Said Susan.
I'll wait for Michael and we'll debrief in the evening. Say hi to Jessica. Good night, Sam.
Night. She set the phone down and glanced at the clock. Less than 11 hours until morning. Susan had had a long and eventful day. All she wanted was to sink into Morpheus's arms and sleep. But it wouldn't come. Her mind kept looping through the events, the data, the calculations. The inner monologue wouldn't shut up. Then something caught her eye. A faint, warm, red glow. She sat up. The stone on her nightstand was pulsing. A tight pang shot through her chest. She threw off the blanket, hit by a sudden clarity, quickly pulled on a t-shirt and shorts, grabbed the warm stone, and stepped barefoot onto the veranda. Alpha lifted her head from the mat, yawned, and looked at her.
Easy girl,
Susan whispered. Alpha was already on her feet, tail wagging eagerly.
well then, princess, let's go check your garden.
The stone flared slightly brighter in her palm. Above, the moon hung bold and full, pouring silver over the path ahead. The earth was soft underfoot, still holding the warmth of the day. The air hummed with silence. With every step, the stone grew brighter, fine veins glowing like capillaries, the light bleeding through her fingers and staining the grass a deep crimson. Alpha trotted ahead, nose up, tail steady, leading straight toward the old wrought iron arch wrapped in wild roses, the one Sam had gifted their father for his birthday. The stone pulsed, grew hot. Alpha sat down in front of the arch and stared through it. Susan came closer and extended her hand, holding the stone in the very center of the arch. Above her, the roses ignited, not in flames, in light, flowing, alive. They didn't just bloom, they breathed and shimmered, releasing notes of wild honey and fresh-cut vanilla bean. The stone in her hand became weightless, then slowly began to lift, floating just above her palm. And then, the passage opened. The air inside the arch rippled like a pond struck by a pebble. Space softened, turned translucent like film. On the other side, the garden, but not their garden, a different one, dreamlike, opalescent. Susan froze, and then she saw her. A silhouette, tall, female, standing there on the far side, framed by blooming roses. She was smiling gently. Susan couldn't look away.
Mom.
She breathed and took a step toward the arch, but the woman raised her hand in warning and shook her head. Susan read the word on her lips. No. A beat, and the stone dropped back into her palm, cold now, and dark. Everything returned to normal. Susan stood still, her skin humming. The air had turned sharply cool.
Alpha, did you see that too?